So on behalf of Google and all the many Googlers here and those tuning in from our overflow rooms, welcome. It's great to have you here. And it's very special to have you here. I understand that you don't often visit corporations. And so this has been a journey we've taken together over the course of the day. Eckhart had a moment to meet with some of us earlier. And we found that really valuable. And one of the things we discussed this morning was wisdom and the difference between information and wisdom. Google has a mission to organize the world's information. And I think if you think about the hierarchy, there's signal and data and information and knowledge. And at the very top of the pyramid is wisdom. And I wondered if you could comment a little bit on what you understand to be the difference between information and wisdom.
Good question. Can I set that aside for just one moment to say how happy I am to be here, how impressed I am by what I have seen and by the people who work here and the general energy field in the company. And if you have come, many young people here, if you've come straight from college, then I'm sure you don't know how lucky you are until you start working for another company. Perhaps everybody who works here, one would, as they would say in India, you must have very good karma to be working here. The openness of people that's reflected in the structure of the company, the way things are arranged, the little rooms that you have for quietness, for meditation, the cafeterias and all that is just beyond belief. So I also experience an openness in the people who work here and far less ego, because many companies are still predominantly run by very big egos. I'm not saying that everybody here is entirely free of ego yet, but much less so than in many other places. So it's wonderful to be here, and if my book sales ever decline and I need a job, I hope you will, you probably won't, but because first of all, I have no computer skills, and secondly, I'm too old, since the average age here is probably about 30. So your question was important. I remember it, I remember it.
I don't.
Knowledge, information, and wisdom, how do they relate? Of course, with the technological revolution, information revolution, digital revolution, whatever you call it, there's an enormous amount of knowledge available to everybody, almost the whole of the world's knowledge, and there's the interconnectedness between people and so on. That's all very good, of course, to have all that accessible to you. There's a danger, though, that you get drowned in too much information and too much knowledge. And by drowned, I mean that the mind gets bombarded with an excess of input, and therefore you miss something that is essential for a human life to be truly fulfilled, and that is a place of peace, inner peace or stillness, a place that one could describe as the source of all intelligence that many people don't even realize exists within them. So I'd like to just talk briefly about that really we're talking about the core of what spirituality means. Spirituality is not having a particular belief structure, is not subscribing to a particular set of thoughts. Spirituality is discovering a dimension within yourself that is, we can either say deeper or higher than the continuous movement of thinking. And of course, all this information and knowledge is experienced in you as thought. So the thinking mind has always been active for many thousands of years in humans, but now it's even more active than before because it gets energized by the incredible increase in input. Before, all you had was the simple sensory input in your immediate surroundings. Then later came books, so you had the added input of that. And then gradually came the mass media, and now this incredible revolution of information technology, computers, and so on. So it energizes that movement of thought that's taking place in every human, which in itself is not necessarily a bad thing. It only becomes a bad thing and self-destructive thing if that is all you experience inside you, in your consciousness. If all you ever experience is that, I call it sometimes mental noise, then you begin to derive your identity from the thoughts in your head, what the thoughts tell you about yourself, and you are trapped in that identity that is based on identification with thinking. All spiritual teachings point to the possibility of finding something in you that is deeper than thinking, a space, a stillness that's always there. And the informational excess of information, you can only successfully deal with that if you have a balance in your consciousness between using your mind to absorb information, to put out new information, to work on the information that you have taken in, input. If you have a balance between that and something that is deeper than thought in you. And really, instead of giving you new knowledge here, I don't want to do that because I don't want to add to the knowledge that you're taking in anyway, far more than you ever need. So instead of giving you knowledge here, I'd like to suggest that you experience at first hand in yourself that place of, I call it sometimes a presence, where you are alert, conscious, but not thinking. And every creative person has some access to that realm. If you have a truly creative insight, you have to go to that place that is deeper than analytical thinking. Analytical thinking itself, or processing information, is not creative. So to find a new solution to a problem in your life requires some creative insight. So whether it's a problem in your work situation or your personal life or something that you need to build or do and you have come to a dead end, or you want to create something whatever it is, a work of art or a new system for the computer, I don't know the expressions for that, you need to go to the place where creativity arises. And every human who is creative has some access to that, even if they don't know it. But it's not only the place where creativity arises, it's also the place that gives sanity to your life, to find a place of stillness, peace, aliveness, where you are not burdened by a lot of the time, unnecessary mental noise. So when you do start thinking again, it actually can be more productive. So where is that place? How do you find that place? If it's there in everyone, how do I realize that within myself? That's really the question. I can just suggest to you 3 or 4 entry points into that state of consciousness, and after I've done that, we can carry on the conversation. A very simple entry point, and this is why my first book is called The Power of Now, is the realization that your entire life consists of the present moment and only the present moment ever. Now, most people, perhaps in some abstract way, they know that, but they cannot sense or feel the truth of that. And I'd like to invite you to actually sense and feel the truth of what I'm saying, which even if there's a great philosopher here, he cannot possibly argue, he or she cannot argue with this statement that whatever you experience ever is present moment. Your entire life unfolds in the present moment. That's all you ever have. Most people don't live as if this were true. They live as if the opposite almost were true, as if the future moment were more important always than the next one. And that happens because of excessive identification with thinking, because usually the thoughts are about the next thing, the next, or what could happen or might happen. So if you can just come to this realization, well, this is all I ever have and ever experience is this moment. This is undoubtedly true. There is nothing else ever. And at that moment, when you fully realize that, you can only realize that an alertness arises in you. Wow. You become alert to, one could almost call it, the presence of the power of this moment, of the power of life itself in this present moment, which consists of, yes, it consists of sense perceptions. It also consists of well, let's look, what is this present moment? This present moment is this room, what we perceive here, what we see, hear, the lights, the totality of the room. So let's become alert so that we can really perceive that. And beyond that which we perceive in this room, is there anything else about that we could call the present moment? Well, if you look deeply enough, yes, there is also the inner energy field in your body that you can actually feel, that you're alive, in your legs, your arms, your feet. That's also part of the present moment, to sense the energy field that pervades the physical body. That's also something you can feel. So there's external sense perceptions, and there's the feeling, the aliveness inside your body. And if you're totally in thinking, you can't feel that at all. You don't feel alive. You're only alive in the upper story of the house, your head. The entire house, you don't inhabit then. So you begin to inhabit the entire body. This becomes part of your experience of the present moment. So sense perceptions, yes. And there is an aliveness even to artificial light. Of course, you might say, I prefer sunlight. Okay, me too. But there's a beauty and aliveness even to artificial light. And there's a beauty and aliveness that is usually overlooked, that's in the texture of this chair here, or whatever you're wearing, and certainly the flowers. And suddenly you become aware of that. And that's not all yet. We're just going into the present moment. So you have that, externals, and you suddenly appreciate the aliveness of all the things that surround you. Other people have to take acid to get there. So you don't need that. You know, with acid people, sometimes they look at a teapot and they say, wow, oh my God. But you don't need to do that. Just be present, and then you appreciate the beauty even of a mass-produced teapot. If it's handmade and hand-painted, even nicer. But even a mass-produced teapot has a presence there. It's there, and it's an alive energy field. Every physicist will tell you it's not a dead teapot. It's molecules and atoms in continuous movement. Everything is vitally alive, and you miss that if you're totally trapped in the mental noise all the time, taking in information. Present moment, sense perceptions. So the inner energy field of the body, and then what else is there to the present moment? Okay, then you have to become really alert. And the next thing that you notice about the present moment is really at the deeper level of the present moment. It's not something that arises in your consciousness, as does the table and this room and even the inner energy field of the body. These are all objects that arise in your consciousness. But if you go deeper even into the present moment, what you encounter is the most incredible secret of human life, which is you encounter the fact that at the bottom of it all, you are conscious. There is the presence that you are, without which you couldn't perceive anything. You couldn't perceive this room, and you couldn't feel the body. Without that consciousness that you essentially are, which Jesus, by the way, called the light of the world, he said to his disciples, "You are the light of the world." And these disciples were not special people, they were fishermen. So certainly he wasn't telling them that they are VIPs. They were the opposite of VIPs. And yet he said, "You are the light of the world." He also said it about himself, but he also said it about others. And so you suddenly discover that essentially, at the most essential level, the essence of who you are is consciousness. But consciousness isn't something you can say, there it is. Because consciousness cannot become an object to itself. It's the eternal subject. The I am that I am of the Old Testament, where when God is asked for his or her name, God says, "I am that I am." That is the essential identity of all beings. So when we talk about the present moment, we talk about different levels of the present moment, from sense perceptions to the feeling of aliveness in the inner body, to the realization that ultimately what we call the present moment and the light of consciousness are one and the same, because that's the thing that always remains. And that consciousness, you can sense it as yourself right now, the presence that you are, even beyond the physical presence. And that is the alertness, that is the realization that is sometimes called awakening. And that is the place also of stillness, where you get out of the mental noise. And that is the source place of creativity. That is intelligence that is non-conceptual. It's primordial intelligence. And if you touch that in yourself, then at first as glimpses, as brief realizations, and then gradually integrate it into your daily life, then you can live from that place, the source, and be not only a more productive human being, but also a more peaceful human being, because then you no longer contribute to the conflict in this world, because the conflict is only created by all those humans who don't know that level in themselves. They don't know who they are. And again, to quote Jesus again, on the cross he said, forgive them, they know not what they do. And why do they know not what they do? They don't know who they are, essentially. So this, I've talked about this, and in the hope that as I'm speaking, there is an experience in you of the depths of the present moment. Because the present moment, people think its present moment is what happens. And of course, because what happens changes all the time, people say there are many present moments. If you look more deeply, of course, there are not many present moments. There's only ever this present moment. There's only this ever. So there are not many present moments. There's only the space of this moment. So there's what happens in it, and there is the space in which it happens, and that space is consciousness. And that is who you are. And when you realize that, you become free of the false sense of self, which your mind tells you something about who you are, which has to do with your history and your successes or your failures or what other people tell you who you are. A little prison. So that's really basically the essence of spirituality, which is very simple, but for some reason, it's not taught at school. All kinds of inessential things are taught at school. But what really matters, the very foundation of human life, and it's not some belief structure. I'm not saying indoctrinate children, the children must believe. It's not belief at all. It's an experience. It's a realization. That's what needs to be taught. That needs to be subject number one at school. Who am I? And everything else is easy once you have that.
Well, I'm not sure I have any more questions. We'll press on.
Company. And if you have come, many young people here, if you've come straight from college, then I'm sure you don't know how lucky you are until you start working for another company. Perhaps everybody who works here, one would, as they would say in India, you must have very good karma to be working here. The openness of people that's reflected in the structure.
So on behalf of Google and all the many Googlers here and those tuning in from our overflow rooms, welcome. It's great to have you here. And it's very special to have you here. I understand that you don't often visit corporations. And so this has been a journey we've taken together over the course of the day. Eckhart had a moment to meet with some of us earlier, and we found that really valuable. And one of the things we discussed this morning was wisdom and the difference between information and...
Much less so than in many other places. So it's wonderful to be here, and if my book sales ever decline and I need a job, I hope you will, you probably won't, but because first of all, I have no computer skills, and secondly, I'm too old, since the average age here is probably about 30. So your question was important. I remember it.
I don't.
Knowledge.
Wisdom. Google has a mission to organize the world's information, and I think if you think about the hierarchy, there's signal and data and information and knowledge, and at the very top of the pyramid is wisdom. And I wondered if you could comment a little bit on what you understand to be the difference between information and wisdom.
Good question. Let's kind of set that aside for just one moment to say how happy I am to be here, how impressed I am by what I have seen and by the people who work here and the general energy field of the company, the way things are arranged, the little rooms that you have for quietness, for meditation, the cafeterias and all that is just beyond belief. So I also experience an openness in the people who work here and far less ego, because many companies are still predominantly run by very big egos. I'm not saying that everybody here is entirely free of ego yet, but